I just talked to Tammy a few minutes ago. She'll be here, but she may be a couple minutes late.
Let's call the meeting to order. We're all present except for Tammy, and she will be a little late this afternoon. She will be here. Chris.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
And Mayor and Commissioners, while they're pulling that up, I just want to let you know that the meeting is being live streamed today, too. So if you do have any comments, it's better for the audience if you can talk into the mic. And one of my favorite fans out there is my mother over in Greenbrier, so she lets me know whether she can hear something or not. So.
You need to speak up, too.
Yes, I know. So, Mom, we're talking Call Lake.
Okay, thank you very much. What we're here to do is to discuss the process that we used here in staff to evaluate the request for proposals and the results of that evaluation for the Phase 1 of the Call Lake program. As you know, this is the demand that we're looking at. Came out of our previous study. And what we've determined is that the City of Enid requires the services of a professional firm to help us establish the program management part and the preliminary engineering for this project, what we're calling Phase 1. And we need a firm that has a very strong program management and engineering in water systems, has the experience to do those things. According to our finance manual, when we acquire professional services, we select the best qualified firm based on a formal response, a written response to a formal request for proposal. Once we have determined who the best qualified is, we open negotiations. If we cannot come to terms on cost, we go to the next firm. And if we can't, we go to the next firm. That is our formal process that we use that's in our finance manual. This program is currently laid out in 2 phases. I think this is the best way to execute it. Phase 1 is a 12-month program. What we're doing here now is we are selecting the program management firm to help us through the rest of the program. So I kind of consider this 12-month interview for this firm. The things that we need to do in phase one, we need to establish the strong program control and processes to manage the rest. We need them to conduct the preliminary engineering. They need to have enough experience in the components that we need to make this pipeline work. Obviously, intake pump, pipe in the ground, water treatment, and integrate with our current water systems and the interfaces of all those parts to get us to a storage contract with the Army Corps of Engineers, and to assess and initiate the environmental and permitting processes. We know that these processes can be very lengthy and have a lot to do with how and where we lay out our pipeline and our pump station, our inlet structure, and our water treatment plant. That's phase one, 12 months. Phase two is to do the detailed design, and we will pick multiple other firms. The firm we pick for the program management will not be the firm that's doing the detailed design. I'll assign that heavy lifting to other firms. Same way with construction. Once we get the designs done and our permits approved, we intend to go after multiple construction contracts to reduce the amount of time it takes to bury 60 miles of pipe. And the program management firm will help us manage the performance of those, the assignment of those, and the interfaces between those. Then there's the construction management. This is the oversight that we use to watch what they do, make sure they do it within standards, within requirements from all the different agencies that we have to deal with, track them, and if something starts to go south, we want to know long before it gets far so we can apply the necessary corrective actions. That's why processes are so important. It's what keeps us on track of what's going on. Then there's startup and commissioning. Once you get everything built, did you build it right? Is it operating right? Did something get put together wrong? Once you've figured all that out, you now have to commission the system, which is from caw to your tap, and make sure it works. And then make sure we can wade through all the paperwork to close out this contract, all the construction contracts, and all the obligations that we'll have with our government agencies that we'll have to deal with. Long, I understand a description, but that's what we're getting ready to do. Once again, phase one is 12 months. I'll repeat myself a little bit. Phase one goals. And these are the things that were out in the RFP. This is what these firms knew we were looking for. Obviously, establish the processes and controls. Get the storage contract. Deal with the permitting and the Corps. One of the more important things that we get out of this is, in this process, we will refine our cost and schedule estimates for what this is really going to take to do. I know we've got a fairly decent number from our previous study, but this gives us a much better number with a lot more confidence, and then provide that data back to you so we can make a decision on what to do next. The scope, obviously, is establish the program management, do the preliminary engineering for these parts, assess and initiate the permitting in the environmental process, help us deal with the permitting at the other agencies. When we do construction, we need DEQ permits. If we're doing, they need to know that we're coming with a design of a water treatment plant and help us work through those processes. Okay. Now we kind of know what we're going to go for. We know how we're supposed to get it, and that is to find the best qualified. To determine who is the best qualified, our processes, our finance manual, we know are qualified to do this work. We found that all the firms met the requirements. The program management approaches, some were better than others. A lot of strong technical responses and some strategic teaming, which helped out. But the end result is, when we got right down to it, those that had better processes and better proposals clearly floated to the top. The evaluation criteria. Now, this is the criteria that we used to evaluate the firms. This comes right out of our finance manual. This information was in the RFP. This is how we are going to evaluate you. So I've given them the evaluation criteria, the goals of what I want this project to succeed, to accomplish, and the scope of work. So I've told them what I want to have somebody propose, that they're going to bring the best man in the world, and then when they sign the contract, I get his third cousin. Okay? That's why these resumes are so important. These are key members to their team that we will count on. The evaluation team. The names are there. As you notice, there's 3 engineers, there's an assistant city manager, and there's the finance director. It may not make sense to you, but I know that engineers tend to think alike. And if I put 5 engineers in there, I need to guard against the fact that we're all reading these things the same way. Joan's input is from a senior management position in the city. Aaron from a finance position. Aaron doesn't do technical work. That's fine. The engineering staff, myself, Robert Morali, questions about the proposal, trying to see if they understood what we wanted, and seeing if there was something that we might think more important than something else. This was their way of making sure they understood what we were looking for. We asked 2 questions of each firm. Have you worked with the others? Since we know that this is a program manager is going to have to work with all these other firms, because we're expecting them to propose to do the detailed design and some of the construction. And the answer was yes. And the other question was, what software or tool do you use to help manage the amount of data that's going to be generated in this program? They all had fairly good answers. Oh, and they range from a proprietary piece of software to Primavera 6, and then SharePoint, which is a web-based SharePoint, common web-based location that you can use to do data transfer and tracking. Then we each of us individually evaluated the proposals based on our reading of those proposals. We racked and stacked them. We came together as a committee and discussed them. And out of that committee, we came up with a rack and stack. The 4th part of this evaluation criteria was reference checks, past performance. Have they done this work before, and did the people they did this work for, are they happy with what they've done? We ended up in a situation where I had 2 proposals that were very, very close together. It was very hard to delineate one from the other. So, in our committee meeting, it was determined that I would go do one-on-one interviews on the top 2. That entailed me taking my proposals that I had highlighted, walking through the proposal, making sure I understood what they said, listen to how they respond to that, see how they interact together, and determine and see what their answers were, and did they make sense. So that's how we scored them. Let's go through the proposal discussions first. This part will go pretty quick. Obviously, they came in and they asked questions. The firms presented their key members, and this is how the 3 of us in the engineering organization ranked them. This is based on the questions they asked, the interaction between the team members, how did the program manager interact with the discussion? Was it all just technical, or was it a mix of both? Did they ignore the technical? Things like that. Now let's go through the proposal evaluations. I had 5 evaluators. We each individually evaluated the proposals. The table on top is how those individuals ranked them. The obvious answers are Black and Veatch, which is B and V for short, came up as the number one proposal. And Burns and McDonnell got most of the number two votes. And the third proposal was Garver. Now, you will notice that there is a very low score on Garver. That's fine. That came from one of the evaluators. That was the way that person interpreted that evaluation. The good thing about that is I saw that when they told me this is how I ranked them, it made me go back and think, did I read that right? So, went back and looked at it again, very critical eye. I'm happy to say from myself, yes, I did read it right. But it's that kind of input from outside an engineering organization that helps me have confidence in what we've done. We sat down as a committee that same day after we discussed them, and we ranked them after discussions. Black and Veatch is number one, Garver number two, Burns and Mac number three. This is more of the same, basically similar rankings. The team was pretty close. We came up with the top two. Reference checks. We conducted the the reference checks or previous work of the top two firms. The reason being, there were clearly two that were top in our evaluations. 6 firms, a lot of references. It didn't make much sense for us to do more than 2. We found that between Garver and Black and Veatch had a much larger portfolio. It's a much larger company, but they've done a lot more of it. No doubt about it.
How'd you come up with Garver as number 2? I'm sitting here looking at your rankings, and I mean, even throwing out the outlier, it seems if you're gonna, I see 3 top choices.
Yes, clearly.
But I don't know how you picked Garver over Burns and Mac based on the criteria that I see here. What am I missing?
Good question. As we discussed them in committee, we all agreed that the proposal was well written. It wasn't written as good as Black and Veatch's. But as we start to go through the proposal, we saw some things that were bothersome. One of the things that was very bothersome to me, because it just is their program management approach wasn't really discussed that much. They had a slide, a picture that says, this is our process. So clearly they have a process.
Are you talking about Burns and Mac?
I'm talking about Burns and McDonnell.
Okay.
A lot of their program management is based on their proprietary software.
Chris, can you go back to the rankings on the screen, too?
Sure. If you look at their proposal where they start talking about approach, it's 3 pages. And a majority of that discussion is, this is what we have to do to our proprietary software to set it up for your program. That was one of the things that helped lower their attractiveness to us. And let's face it, we're talking about best qualified. Okay, best qualified on about how do 5 people read these? How did they respond to us in pre-proposal? Committee, how did we discuss them? Did we overlook things? Stuff like that. And that's how we got there. I mean, I could provide a couple more examples if you'd like. You know, actually, I'll give you one. Another one of the items that they stated that was somewhat bothersome, if I can find it. Would you bring up the Burns and McDonnell? And go to page, I guess, can I drive? No. page 5 on executive summary. It'll be a picture. Should be one more. Not a graph, not a picture. There we go. This is their definition of their program management process.
That's it?
There weren't a lot of words to help me out. I know they've got a process. They tell me right here in this picture. They've got a piece of software that they use to do program management.
Well, they also reference an attached compact disc for a more thorough explanation of our program management tool. Did that have anything enlightening? I didn't get a compact disc with mine, but they reference it in.
I didn't watch it.
Okay.
Written response. Nobody else provided one.
Well, but I'm guessing that they were intending on, and they found a.
Okay. True. You have a point. But
I mean,
if
that's what they
can't-
reference.
If you can't say it in the pages the way the other folks say, and you have to have a video,
I don't know, there's like, 80 pages of words, a video might be enlightening. So, okay, I'm just curious, what, go ahead.
okay. So there's not a lot of words in here, so I've got to go look for them. And then the quotes, obviously on the fact that they didn't really provide a lot of detail on it. And then they had a couple of quotes in here where they would collaborate with the city of Enid on decisions. I mean, I'm neither one of these individually are fatal flaws. And honestly, if you get right down to it, if you picked them, I'm confident they could get the job done. But I don't think, and my staff, and I believe, and I can speak for the evaluation team, they didn't think they were as good when we got done with it. So, as the committee went through the discussions and ended up with final ranking as we did, clearly Black and Veatch was number 1, Burns and Mack was number 3, and Garber was number 2.
Mayor and Commissioners, just keep in mind, too, this was a series, this wasn't just one meeting or 2 meetings, this was a series of a lot of effort. Doesn't mean necessarily that we've come to the best conclusion. However, we do believe that we've identified the top 3, I think, with some certainty. I know you've had a chance to read your proposals and see what you think, and certainly this decision is so important. We need to take as much time, whether it's today or additional meetings, to make sure that we make the right decision. And all we're trying to do, all Chris is presenting is what staff believes may be the best, at least the top 3.
Absolutely. And like I've said before, this is the firm that's going to help us manage the rest of this effort.
Can you help me here? I mean, I found myself going through these proposals, struggling to come up with what criteria I should be using for evaluating their ability to do the job well and efficiently and all that. And there's a lot of information here, and they all have tons of references. They'll have tons of qualifications.
Yes.
They've all have lists of water pipe projects they've done. And I don't know what I should be using to evaluate this. I feel like I'm lacking something. Does anybody else have that same problem? I mean, I just don't know what I'm missing here.
I tend to rely on the staff to do exactly what they've done. I'm not an engineer.
This is the valuation criteria right here. This is what comes right out of our finance manual.
Where did the finance manual information come from? Who made that?
It's based on state law, and the commission approves what's in the finance manual by resolution.
The actual request for a proposal. It's a PDF.
In terms of meeting with them, you met at the pre-meeting, you met with all the groups.
All of them.
You have been and talked to additional.
Yes, I have.
Everything that's been done here is based on what's in these books.
Yes.
Except for
And what's on, well, this didn't come out so well.
Have you gotten your question answered?
We'll get there.
Would you scroll down a little bit?
Well, I'm with you, Ben. I mean, I share the same concern because this is a $275 million decision that I'm not willing to relinquish without some pretty clear idea of what what these people are gonna do. This is all fine and good, but until we find out what they're gonna charge us, it may be pretty obvious.
That's good right there. This is right out of the RFP. This is what they wrote their proposals to, and I apologize, I probably should have sent it to you. Would you back up just a touch? Okay, program management. These are the things I expect you to do.
And these were all 6 of these were pre-qualified to be able to meet the minimum threshold.
Exactly.
Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
Talk to me, I guess, I mean, part of me kind of feels like, Aaron's right here. We're got to rely on you guys because we are not engineers. I mean, I would like some criteria, but to that extent, to that degree, what did you rely on? I mean, what criteria were you looking at as staff?
What was I looking
Talk
at?
to me about
Okay.
what you saw as give me some examples of the bellwethers. There's clearly some of these proposals were way at the end or way at
Could you go back up, please? Some more. Again. Ah, here we go. One more up to the next page. This right here breaks down those evaluation criteria that we have in our finance manual to the things that are specific to this program. Provide an integrated program schedule with key milestones. I mean, these are the scope of work. This is what we expect them to do in 12 months. This is what you would expect me to determine, to measure you on, because you need to address how you're going to attack all these. How are you going to execute these? Manage and planning. Coordinate the project information.
better than group.
If you'll look at the Black and Veatch and the Garver proposals, they talk about their corporate processes. This is the processes we use to deliver program management. This is the processes we use to deliver engineering. So that's the key. That's one of the big bellwethers for me. For Morale, it's how did they address dealing with water treatment and pipeline. For Robert, it's more of a systems engineering question.
One clarification for me, and I probably should understand this, but I don't. You mentioned at the outset that this firm that we choose today, or whenever we decide to choose it, is not going to be involved in the design of the project or in the construction of the project.
They will not be responsible for the detailed design.
But you said they would, well, it's not going to be the same one, but I was going to ask the same question. I didn't understand the first 12 months when you were back there.
Okay.
In the beginning.
Okay, I can go back through it
But-
quite easily.
If they're involved through the entire construction phase,
Size of this program.
will those doing the construction work and the field work report to them?
Yes, they will.
They report to us?
Let me back up.
Whoever we choose.
Let me clarify the question. We will contract with individual firms.
Won't they probably be involved in assisting us in choosing a firm, or not?
Yes, I would expect them at least to help us get through the paperwork. They clearly, being a contractor, they're not going to make the decision. We make the decision. It's our program.
Yeah, Chris, and to clarify even more, this engineer is the overall project engineer, like you've said, but we're going to have many engineers that are likely going to be involved in this project before it's over, right?
Oh, yes, I expect that when we get into detailed design here, that we will contract with 4 or 5 separate design firms.
Every time we contract with a separate one, obviously, we're going to come into the commission, you guys will.
You'll approve every one of
select
them.
Approve them, just like we're doing this time.
Let me understand a little bit, Chris.
Sure.
We're supposed to be authorizing you to engage with the top two or three. I think that's the recommendation.
That is the recommendation.
And you will ask them to present an estimate of cost. If you're comfortable with that, what is the process moving forward? Are we authorizing you to engage at that expense? And I know that you would then be able to go back to the second or the third option if it seems too high, but explain what, I gather authorizing the two or three, but at what point do we have, or we relinquish control over the dollars, I guess?
That's a good question.
Actually, sorry. Okay. Here's the bottom line. I'm at a point where I've got two firms that I know are very close together. And it's my recommendation, and I've got a third that's not far away, but they didn't come up to the same level. It's our recommendation that we bring those two firms back to this council, make them do presentations on how they're going to attack and successfully complete this program for all of us. And from that position, from the results of that, then we come back and say, staff, we identified this firm as the best qualified, and we're going to go negotiate a price with them. And then, depending on how long that takes, and whether or not we have to break out into go to the second firm if we're not happy with what, we can't come to terms, then we come back and say, okay, we're going to come back and recommend that we award a contract for somewhere between what I believe to be $500,000 and $1 million to do 12 months worth of work. And this 12 months worth of work is the way we measure this firm on whether or not we want to live with them for the hard stuff. And if we can't, if they don't do what we want, if they can't answer our questions, if they can't give me the data in a way as I can share it with you and the folks in the city, I don't want to be stuck with them for that long. This is important enough that we've got to be able to provide the information from staff to management and to the city as a whole.
I have some comfort in knowing that one company's been in business 100 years and the other one 96. It's not their first rodeo.
It is not. And you all saw the slides. This is basically the snapshot of the firms. Black & Veatch, founded in 1915. They're a worldwide corporation. They did $3 billion in revenue last year. They're headquartered in Overland Park. They will be staging out of the offices of Olson and Associates in Oklahoma City. And they've identified who their program manager is. Garver, Freese & Nichols. But this program will be managed out of the Garver office in Norman, Oklahoma. They've identified Michael Graves. And I will say that, we have experience with Garver. They've done work for us before.
Towers,
Water towers.
is that all?
They've done some smaller stuff, but let me go back to what's important to me as executing this program and my staff. They've got processes, and you can scale processes. If you know if you have, it's kind of like the ISO standards. Write down what you do what you write down, and report on it, and make it better. Continuous improvement. If you've got processes and you follow those processes, you know when things are starting to go south before they do, or before they get very far. I came in here in January of 2013. Murali went to India for 6 weeks, and I took over the water tower programs from a dead stop. Their processes helped me do that. And as we know, those programs came in pretty much on time and budget, both water towers.
I'm kind of leaning towards, I mean, I'd like to see, I think I'd like to see proposals from those top three. I'd like to have a little more choice, but before, tell me on the bottom three, give me like, half a minute on each one, why they get tossed out so universally. I mean, if they really are across the board at the bottom, can you tell me why?
Yes, I can. When we had discussions with LAN in our pre-proposals, the program management firm was, the program management guy was pretty much not very well engaged. When you read the proposals, you think there's a process there, but you really don't know. You can't really put your finger on it. The Garver proposal, not Garver, the Guernsey proposal, I need to answer his questions. Alan Plummer, once again, real strong on water treatment, water reuse. They've done that for us before, small programs, of course. But in the end, their proposal just didn't clearly identify those processes, controls, and how they were going to execute them. Not that they couldn't do the work, it's just, and that's the unfortunate thing. We're talking about the cream of the crop here in terms of A&E firms for this kind of work. And it's trying to pick between really nice cars.
Is the work that you've put in on it so far figured into the 12 months, or does that come after we choose it?
No, sir, that is not included. In my opinion, this is too much to do to help us get through the rest of it. We'll have a better definition on what those costs and schedules are really going to be, and you'll have the information you need in terms of, are we facing any environmental problems, any permitting issues, any legal issues, all of those things that.
Too, again, we think and I'm comfortable that we've identified the top three. However, that is from staff's perspective. We'll certainly bring in three, and if we want to bring in all six, we could bring in all six. It's important, as Chris has said multiple times, we want to make sure you have all the information you need to make the best decision for the city going forward. So what we would like to have out of this meeting is just a little bit of direction about what you would like us to do. We were not expecting you to pick one of them today.
Oh, absolutely not.
Well, I would.
And if, we can come back.
I think we knew that.
Study session if you want.
Recommended two.
Well,
Qualified firms, but at some point you have to make a decision. So you have to,
Yes, sir.
sometimes the criteria to use gets to be pretty narrow. But I've sat through a number of these presentations of various kinds, and I don't feel like it's assisted me in any way, shape, or form in making a good decision. So, but anyway, I think that the staff has obviously researched this. They've obviously spent a lot of time talking to other customers that these people have had and whatnot. I'll come and listen to a presentation if the rest of the commission wants to hear presentations, but to me, I think it's going to be basically a waste of time, their time and ours.
Chris, I'd like to commend you on the process that you guys have followed. I think I appreciate the value that your committee has brought to this.
Thank you.
One area that I would maybe like.
Another contractor. It's my program, it's our program. We make those decisions.
Okay, so why do we need these people?
Because I don't have the manpower necessary to manage this magnitude of a program.
Okay, so then why do you go back to listen? I'm not giving you a hard time, but if you're gonna have them do this, I don't.
Well, keep in mind, I
Do they
said
give you recommendations,
keep
we
in
should
mind-
dig the ditches or?
formal recommendations.
We'll listen to him, Commissioner, absolutely, we'll listen to him, but I think what he's saying is, we're also going to put our own
absolutely.
values and judgments into it when we bring it to you. I don't think he's saying that he would ignore them. He's just saying that overall,
Their
they
recommend,
wouldn't solely determine who or recommend who's going to do it. I mean, ultimately, that would be your decision, and we would want to add our input and expertise and bring that to you to make that decision.
What did their references tell you in that regard?
in what regard?
Ones that you checked, the references. They're not going to give you a reference that gives them a bad reference either. I understand that.
Basically, when we did the check of the work that they had done, the people that we had talked to had mostly good things to say. You know, some things like, unfortunately, we had one or two that was, well, I wasn't here when it started, but they've been very, very helpful to me. And then we would ask, would you pick them again? And some of them would say, probably, and some said, yes.
Did any of them build a 60-mile pipeline? The references that they contacted?
References, did we get 60-mile pipeline?
Oh, yes.
Miles.
On,
Go ahead, come here.
certainly,
Robert, you need-
several of them.
Mike.
Yeah, come here. Certainly with Black and Veatch have a number of projects throughout the world, actually, where they've done large pipelines as well. And with Garber and Freeze and Nichols, they have done probably as many large diameter water lines as anyone as far as designing and administering construction. So they have vast experience, and we checked with particularly on those firms down in San Antonio. There have been a number of large waterline projects done down there, done by Black and Veatch, and quite acceptable, and also by Freeze and Nichols. And so we have a very good reference on those firms' experience on large diameter pipelines, right-of-way acquisition, dealing with inlet structures, and dealing with treatment plants. And
It's your responsibility, we're gonna come after you if it doesn't work.
And
You know.
and you have a good point. And the instructions that they will be given is, you come with 20 minutes of presentation and tell us, how are you going to lay out and administer this program? Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Although, I mean, part of that, I assume, well, they better be bringing, you know, their identified project manager who they've identified in the proposal, and some of the parties, or at least have some of the principals on hand. When we did the contract for the comp plan, you know, we set through several proposals that, looking at the proposals, they all looked roughly the same. And then walking out, actually having seen the principals and talked to the principal parties, I mean, I think we all had dramatic responses to at least one or two of those. Just having some interaction with the people who we're going to have to be dealing with. I mean, that's more than anything what I want to see. I hope they bring people who actually will be doing the work. I, you know, expect them, since they have identified parties, that at least some of them will show up. And if they don't, that in and of itself is kind of a statement. But when we
Exactly.
did the comp plan, we had a guy in here who actually presenting, that I think we all walked out of here going, oh God, we don't want to work with him. And I would have known that from the paper proposal, or, you know, you guys might not have either. So that's a useful tool. And I know what you mean, Ron, but about the waste of time, but I kind of feel like with a job this big, it may be a waste of a meeting for us, but we got to do the.
So that's part of what I have to do.
No, I liken this to just a job interview. You guys
Exactly.
are figuring out who you're wanting to work with, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a voice in that, and I'd like to hear the presentations, and it sounds like you've got it completely under control, so, I'm good with it, but I do see some value in having some 20-minute dialogue, and just to comfort us of, these are the people that we're marrying for the next 12 to.
And let me go back.
Are we talking about 1 to 6 years?
Yeah, 5 to 7 years is what we're talking about. Okay, it's a 12-month job interview of us watching them perform.
That's because Phase 1 is going to take
12
12 months
months.
to give us the whole project plan.
And
And 1
if
to
they
5 after that?
do what?
Then 2nd to the 5th year after that? or
Yes.
6th.
Yes.
I'm not sure 20 minutes is enough time if we're going to live with them for 6 years.
You just tell us how long. I'm sure they'd be glad, because they'd like to have the job.
I understand
So
that.
they'll talk as long as you want.
And I go back to, I've got two firms that are very, very close together. I know which one I would pick, but it's not my choice. It's my
I'm just not
recommendation.
convinced with a project like this is the one that makes the best present.
Well, at least you'll know that the three, what you determine, I mean, we've already deemed them to be the top three from our perspective, so
Yeah,
you've got to separate them from there to the
Great.
one.
What you've done carries a lot of weight to me, but I think we need to have the three in here. I agree. Any other questions, comments? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 4-2.
Move we
very much.
adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
You guys want to be here longer?
We have a second.
Oh, second.
Good job, Rodney. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 6-0.